Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about how to edit references in a Word document where the word referencing tool has been used. And I'm going to talk about how we can do this in the most efficient way possible without any risk of losing our changes. At the end of the video I'll also look at how translators can do it in a cat tool, again in the most efficient way possible. So here's a document that uses the reference tool. We can tell because when we click on it, the text turns grey. The other clue, if we right click, we see update field, and the last thing we can look for is manage sources, and we'll see the sources in here if the referencing tool has been used rather than the references being keyed in manually. Now I've highlighted in this document a few errors, and now you might think the easiest way to change this is just to change these errors like this, or we could also do find and replace. If that same mistake appears various times in the document, we could use find replace. We could use wildcards to find replace these numbers. We replace the hyphens with end dashes. But what happens if we do this? I see I've made this change now, but if for some reason I update the fields and then I go back, here it is, we see the spelling mistake is back in there, and we've lost these highlights as well. But the main thing is that the spelling mistake is still in there. Why? Because it hasn't been changed here in the sources, which is what Word uses to update the list of references. So I'm going to undo that. I'm also going to look at this text instead. It's the same text, but basically I've changed the referencing tool to APA. Just to make it a bit easier for us to follow. The original had the title first, but this one has the author first. And that's a good example of the advantage of using the referencing tool, because at any point we can change the style. So I'm using APA. Okay, at the moment, okay, I've undone my errors there, but on the original, let's change this one to APA, and we see that now we see the author first. Okay, but the reason I've created a separate document is so that I've still got these highlights that you can see. So how can we change this? Well, we could go into manage sources. So let's see this one for Raveland. I can find Raveland in my list. I can go to edit, and I can go here to change it to the correct spelling of Washington, and click on OK and click close. And then when I update the fields, then we see that Washington is written correctly. But what if Washington is written incorrectly multiple times in our list? Or what if, for example, I want to change DC, if I want to put dots in DC, and maybe I've got 15 different occurrences of Washington DC in there. Well, it's not very productive to change that in the reference list. To go into manage sources and change it each time. So what we can do is we can actually take the file that Word is looking at and change it in there. So let me show you what I mean. Let me just undo so we can see the highlights again. And I'm going to save this and close. And here's the demo text. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to make a copy of it. You don't actually need to do this, but you can do it just to be safe. And we're going to rename this copy. We're going to change the file extension. If you don't work with file extensions visible, look up online how to make your file extensions visible in Windows Explorer. I recommend that any translator or editor should have your extensions visible so that you can make changes like this. So we're going to change it to .zip. This will only work, by the way, with docx files. You can't do this with a .doc. You change it to .zip, and then you open the zip, and then you go to custom XML, this folder, and then you're going to take this file called item1. You press Ctrl+C, and then we go back until we're outside the zip and we paste it here. And then we're going to open it in, I recommend opening it in something like Notepad++. You can do this in Notepad, but it will be easier in Notepad++. And now it all looks a bit daunting at the moment, but that's because there are no line breaks in here. You may even see it, if you don't have word wrap switched on, you may even see it as a single line of text. I'm just going to switch word wrap back on. What we're going to do to make this a little bit easier to see, put your cursor at the top, press Ctrl+H to bring up the Find Replace box, and you're going to find a closing angle bracket followed by an opening angle bracket. And we're going to replace it with the same thing but with a line break in the middle. And I know this is quite small. I can't really make it any bigger. No, I can't make it any bigger on the screen. But what I've got here is the same thing, closing angle bracket, opening angle bracket at the end, and in between I've got \r\n, which is how we do a full carriage return, a full line break in Notepad++. It might be different in the text editor that you use. And we click on Replace All. And basically what we're doing is everywhere where there are two tags right next to each other, we're inserting a line break between the two. Okay. If we wanted to make this even more visible, we could also select this tag here, and we can put a line break before this tag, and we can even do that twice. And then what we can do, what we can see now, we can see each reference in a separate block. Okay, so this is the same as the information that we find in Word. If we go to References and we click on Manage Sources and we click on Edit, okay, each of these fields, they're not necessarily in the same order, but each of these fields is what appears on a new line in Notepad++. Okay, so now we can just go through each reference and we can look for where there's something that we want to change. So let's say we want to change these hyphens in the page numbers. There are two ways. So we want to change it to an N dash. Okay, so I've put an N dash in replace with. Now the simple way is to, I say simple way, it's the slow way, but it's the simple way. We can click on Find Next, and every time it appears between two numbers, we click on Replace, where it's in page numbers. Okay, but I'm having to skip past a lot of things, right? So let's undo the change I just did. And this time, I'm going to use a regular expression. You can also do this in Word using wildcards, which has a slightly different syntax if you're more comfortable doing that. So I'm going to search for, with regular expressions, let's search for the tag first and just check our syntax is correct. Yes, that works. Okay, then we can say a digit. I click on Find Next. It's still working. Okay. We want any number of digits. So we're going to put a plus sign after the digit. This means any number of digits. So you'll see when I click on Find Next, it selects the whole number, and then I can do a hyphen, and we don't need to worry about what comes after there. If we have the pages tag followed by a number followed by a hyphen, it means we're looking at a range of numbers. And we can put the whole of the first part, basically everything up to the hyphen, if we put in brackets, and then in the replace, we're going to put $1. That means we keep whatever is in that set of curly brackets. Sorry, not curly brackets, round brackets. And so we're going to keep the contents of the round brackets, and it will be followed by an end dash. Let's go to the top just to make sure we're catching everything. We click on Replace All, and it's replaced 10 occurrences. So that's going to have saved us a lot of time. What about this Washington that we had? Okay, it was spelled incorrectly like this. We can spell it the proper way. We don't need regular expression anymore. We can just go back to normal. I can click on Replace All. And it hasn't found any. Maybe I forgot to, maybe I'd already changed it. Let's just check. It was the item 4. Let's see. There we go. Okay, Rabeland. So let's check. Rabeland. Okay, I'd already changed it in this version, but let's say we want to change Washington DC and put dots in between. And even a comma before it. A lot of style guides call for a comma before it. Well, we can do it like this. I'm going to go to the top and click on Replace All, and it's replaced 2 occurrences. Okay, and then what I would do, I would just go through each reference and just look out for anything else. So I see here we've got page numbers. Sorry. We've got a space and then a hyphen and then a space. So, well, I can go back to my previous search. And this time I can say if it's space hyphen space. And I'll replace it with what I had before. Replace all. Okay, there was only 1 occurrence, but I don't need to look through. I know now there's only 1 occurrence of this. Another thing I can do now to check we've not missed any others is I can say look for pages followed by numbers followed by anything except an end dash. Okay, find next. I'm probably going to find... Okay, that one hasn't worked. Is it supposed to be an exclamation mark? No, okay, for some reason that one's not working. I'll put something in the notes explaining what I'm doing wrong when I've worked that out. And so yeah, so we'll scroll through. We've made all, once we're happy, we've made all the changes that we want. Another thing you can do, notice I've got a mixture of, in some places I've got the full first names, like here, and in other cases I've just got the initial. Well, if I wanted to make sure it was only the initial, again I could do a regular expression to replace this. Okay, so I can search for first, followed by a capital letter, followed by any character, plus sign mean any number of times, followed by the closing tag, and I can put brackets around the parts that I want to keep, and I'm going to replace it with $1 followed by a dot, because we're just going to have the initial, followed by $2. Let's replace that, and you see I've replaced the first name with just the initial, and I've done that 7 times. Okay, let's save that. I don't want to talk too much about regular expressions. You can do these changes manually if you prefer. Let's save this. And then let's see what happens if I put this back in the zip. So I'm going to press Control X or Control C. Let's just do a copy. Place it back in here. Control V. It should ask me if I want to overwrite. I'll say yes. Then go back up, and now we're going to rename this zip as docx. We're going to open it. Now don't worry if you get this error message, just click on yes. And you'll see everything's still there. Now if I go down to the bottom, we still see these errors, but that's because we haven't changed the content of the document. We've changed the content of the references. So if I go to Ravelin now, you don't need to do this, but just to show you what has happened, you see now it says Washington, and we've got the comma and the dots in there. And you'll also see that in the preview here, it's displayed correctly. And all what this means is that we can right click and we'll say update field. And now if I go to Ravelin, you'll see that Washington DC is written correctly. Not only that, but at this stage we can change to any other style, and we won't lose those changes. You should see the end dashes have been put in there as well. So we see an example here. So that's how we can make our changes without having to open them up in the one by one in the reference tool. I did say I was going to look at how to do it for translators, but I think rather than make a long video, I'll do that in a separate video. I'll try to include the link in the notes here. So in a separate video, I'll talk about how to do the referencing if you're working in a CAT tool such as MemoQ, SDL Traddle Studio, etc.